Mage man, the great ghost cometh.
I will say this: Garkowski will be back.
Ooh. Hey.
No.
Good afternoon, and I wish to bid all our viewers welcome to the Spellmonger review stream. Sponsoring our work today is the Ghost Rock fan server, led by Aaron. Say hello.
I am the court wizard. All shall fear me. And my little dog.
Of course, we have Terry in the lower left. So welcome. We're happy to have you here. Jonathan in the middle on the bottom. He is in charge of the tabletop RPG for the Spellmonger, and we are happy to have him and ask some questions today. In the upper left, we have Dave. He is our wiki mage for the Ghost Rock. He tries to correlate all the lore we have online, and along with MStarr, who is not here.
I'm the token British.
We'll have a lot. Token British. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
In the lower right, we just have how you're all seeing us live right now, so you can ignore the lower right. I am Jon Sinclair, so I'm just hosting. Yeah, ignore the man in the corner. He doesn't exist.
You should have a curtain. There you go.
Could, I would.
For me, when it really took off was sending that kid with the message to go see Kuu in the castle, and he's threatening him with all of these negative consequences, and Tyndall's just like, oh my god, would you really do that? And he's like, it's not that important. It's just I need the kid to go do that.
There's going to be a lot of that coming forward. I designed the series with that sort of thing in mind. There's some misdirection. There's some even occasionally misinformation, and continuity issues aside, that's on purpose. I'm trying to distract you and get you comfortable, and then beat you down with a new revelatory fact or a new character perspective that's going to totally change your perspective on everything that you've read before.
I think there's so much going on, and there's this huge rereadability with the series. So that really draws me in, because I remember I listened to the series the first time, and then I read back through from the beginning, and I remember getting into book 6 and just these scenes happening, and I completely forgot that they happened, and just how much that added to my enjoyment of the book. I still, even to just a few weeks ago, I found another god that hadn't been added to the wiki, which I'd somehow missed because there was a little note, and I was like, I'm sure I've got all of the gods on there, all of their citations from the books, and then I'm reading Mage Lord again. I'm like, damn it, she had a daughter, and I'm like, and it's like, so. Because it's so enjoyable, you don't notice.
Are we going to see a lot of sieges in the series? With the cover art as a hint, should readers expect castles, fortresses as the main stage for drama?
No.
I think book one is book one is the most static book, because it's kind of all set in the same veil, and I think every other book after that, you're in different places. We're moving. We're in. Even in book 3, where we're setting up a new domain, we're in Gilmora, we're back in Castabriel. So I think there is a big siege part to book 1, and there are siege elements in the series, but they're very much just part of a much bigger.
My answer I wrote down earlier was castles are a big deal, but not as a scene of drama. It's base building, not castle life as a theme. Yeah. And Journey Mage is about about building a series of small tower keeps in the Alshari wilderness. Castles being important to feudal life, but they're not omnipresent. Like, you don't set everything in the castle. It's the domain of that land. But what can a new reader expect and get enjoyment from? So world building is a highlight of the series as it moved forward, creating locations such as Gilmora, Sevendor, Tudri, to name a few. Without getting heavy spoilers, what is your favorite location?
Sevendor.
Sevendor.
Okay, I'll be the weird one and just say
it's Sevendor for me too.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about Sevendor, for me, I feel like it became one of the main characters. Like, so because you like, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but the book opens with Min's new brother-in-law turning around is reward for saving humanity.
What a
And just that-
shithole.
What a shithole! You took the words out of my mouth. Like, just brilliant. And then you see this land or this character and how it changes and develops and grows. What's your
so my
favorite? What's your
favorite
favorite?
location is in Ultramar. I find it to be the most richest
Mm.
and valuable section of Alshar. It's the duchy Boval Vale is set in. For those who are new to the series, it has a rich magical history. It isn't well known, and the real reasons I really enjoyed it are found in Shadow Mage, and it's the people that are there and how they interplay as that story goes on. That it's just like, oh, this is amazing. You have a nice little drama set up. I just want to take this away and eat it, or take this away and perceive it later.
Yar, matey. Anybody who doesn't live his life on the deck of a ship is a pillock.
You cannot spend as much time in a world like that, a land like that, as I have. I think I know every square inch and every pebble in Sevendor at this point, just because I've been over the damn map so many times, and I've written about everything from every perspective. And we're going to be Sevendor for a while, so it will be a even greater exploration of Sevendor as a magical land in the future.
Say it gets to shine as a knight in the siege and gets more depth as the series continues.
Do you mean K?
Azar,
Yeah, I've got a little litmus test on that. If you came at this series reading it first, it's Sire Say, and if you came at the series listening to Jon first, it's Sire K. And
Right.
you can really how do you start at the series? Kind of for me, I've noticed totally different fans. It sticks in your head how it develops.
I'll cop to this, and I feel really bad about this, but at a certain point, especially when we went to audiobook, we had to make decisions about how things were pronounced. And when I was originally writing the series, I did not have that in mind at all. It's amazing how much the audiobooks have changed how I approach character's name, and I'll have to think of it in John Lee's voice before I'll prove it for inclusion now. But there are a whole raft of names that, especially from Spellmonger and Warmage, that oh my god, what was I thinking?
Many readers find different aspects of the stories rewarding: combat, action, spell design, world building, political maneuvering. What elements of the Mongerverse kept you invested throughout the story?
basically every single one of those is spectacular, but the two standouts for me are the political and the military bits. Both are well written, and Terry, you kind of balance them off of each other so that one of them starts to get boring, he'll have a battle. And when you're sick and tired of a battle, like he'll rescue a political prisoner and then have a political diatribe for a chapter.
The way Minalan runs, he's just, I find him incredibly funny, but it's not a Terry Pratchett kind of funny where it's silly humor. It's really, you know, it's just real life, and this guy is just dry.
I would love to see a number of distinctive smoke furniture for each particular wizard who chooses to do that in my world. One thing that I really enjoyed about the Jackson's Fellowship of the Ring was the fact that the dwarves had a very specific and individual, very distinctive pipe that was hand carved, and I'd like to see that sort of little detail added to the Spellmonger universe over time.
That would be interesting, I think.
It's funny from a writer's perspective. Believe it or not, I will occasionally write something and then go, "Oh my God, they're gonna freak out over this on Discord." I mean,
we've had a few.
Yeah, and I try to put one or two of those in every book, and I will warn you that book 13 is gonna blow the lid off the joint.
I'll get into some of the reasons why and some of the other questions, but in terms of just pure mechanics, it would probably be the mass untie knot spell, because I am a huge fan of ingenuity-based problem solving and of magic being, you know, used smartly by smart people.
You know, Minalan introduces the Green Warden position and then the Spell Warden position, and that really captured my imagination, because it's not just about war magic. It's not just about you know the politics and ruling everything. How is this domain going to run? And people need to eat stuff. I need a wizard that can do this, and I need a town that's running, and there's going to be all of these lower magi, these foot wizards and head witches heading over because suddenly that
there's
group
power at
that
a lower
was,
level.
Yeah,
I think we can
even more
establish their
special.
names if you'd like.
Olmec and Bannermore.
Is there a magical spell or type of magic you really enjoyed reading about in this series? So obviously glyphs for you, Aaron. I actually enjoyed them as well. I really like the fact that glyphs were used as metaphors to. It brings me back to a lesson from my English degree. The idea that words have meaning and context. Which came first, the goat or a sheep? And words can only exist if there's a need to differentiate them. I really enjoyed that idea. I assume, Terry, you were agreeing that that's what you wrote for?
Well, yeah, essentially the I guess my approach to magic in general is based on my research into religious studies and to the arcane and occult in this world. And the idea that and just psychology, you put them both together and add a truly magical component to it. And if you're going to use something as complex and varied as magical power as I've presented it, then you really need to have a symbolic system. Really, that's the only thing that separates different types of magic is the type of symbolic system. Just computer languages, I would assume that different symbolic systems allow you to do different things better or worse. And I think that way that Imperial magic evolves from a kind of rudimentary Alcon magic demonstrates the similarities of ideas between the two cultures, but also plays up a lot of the differences. Then when you add things like gurvani, and they have an entirely different concept, still loosely based on alcohol, but it's their thing, and because of that, their magical system has different strengths and weaknesses from the Imperial or even the alcohol and then you get to the sea folk and things just get crazy because you're talking about a species that doesn't even really see things like dimension as in the same ways that surface dwellers would. The sea folk see things in three dimensions because in the you can swim up and down as well as travel along the surface.
Yeah.
So I think the concepts that come inherent with the race get expressed through the magical systems, and as an author I can play around with that and get some really cool effects.
I actually enjoyed 2 points: magic and politics. I liked how Minalan was generally, problem solving a situation, lateral thinking, and how the magic would kind of follow along that pattern of like, well, I need this, I need C to happen, so I need to cause B through A, and I'll do this. And as that was something I would follow, I was looking at everything else in the book, and the politics also drew me in. So through Warmage and Magelord, those court scenes, I was very interested, and they kept me waiting for the next bit of magic that would come. And finally, it was like, oh, can I see how the politics of who's in charge here, and are they going to be affecting over here? And then how does Minalan set up the board, basically, of chess in his little land? Or I guess it's a marble game now. I think this is where we were left at.
Right, marble.
He's playing
board.
with marbles. Yeah.
Marbles, yeah.
What left you desiring to see developed more in the next books? And I think we kind of all see that we're really caring more about how the magic system developed and how Minalan related to it. And like for me, it was definitely the politics, like the censorate. I wanted to see how that was going to be an effect.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say the first book is actually rather self-contained. If it were just to stop there, I wouldn't say that there was anything in particular that drew me to the next book, other than the fact that it's a superbly written story. But going forward, it definitely becomes more about the politics for me. And how he just manages to make people dance in the palm of his hand, and how it, like, even as early as Mage Lord,
how
you're
Penny
getting
manipulates him to make them dance in his hand.
That's a good point.
That transition between these incredible battle scenes, and it just the full descriptions that are going on, and you feel like you're there, and then the next second you're in Wilderhall, you're in you're in the court of the Duke, and just the transition of that and how that played into each other. Yeah, I really enjoyed that through the series. Starts the Spellmonger, but there's this really rich interplay between the peasants and the castle folk and the nobility, and just how people talk to each other. And I just thought it just felt for me really realistic. Like there was just something that drew me into it, and that continues massively into Warmage when you get into the courtroom scenes and you see how little respect Min gets at the start. So it's just that I wanted to see more of that, as we went through.
And yet he maintains enough, relatability and down to earthness that he can do something along the lines of give King Kamaclavan tits on a tapestry.
I think it was a pink.
I forgot about
it was a pink fluffy sword as well. I think there was a.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I really enjoy the political communities of the duchies. Like you said, barons are kind of quest givers and whatnot. I enjoyed the difference between castellans and the petty nobility. I really enjoyed when it got to like Gimbal, the pimple of West Valeria, and I kind of enjoyed this byplay between the Magi and these excess chivalry and their itchy spurs. It really makes an in-depth world and how it feels.
I'm campaigning for swamp witches to have some ability to defend themselves in an Ultramar down there. So yeah,
they just use poisons. It's okay. We're good.
Point taken. Let me make a note.
Obviously, you must receive fan mails and responses. So, what have fans stated as motivation for enjoying the series long term?
That's a great question, and it has honestly ranged everywhere from a more general love of world building and detail, sometimes very specific things. I mentioned earlier the county level bureaucrat who wrote me, who really just loved the fact that I focused on that. Would like to mention that recently had a bit of fan mail from someone who works in civil administration, who's a bureaucrat at the county level, who thanked me so much for actually paying attention to the difficulties of civil administration and management and bureaucracy when faced with magic and all the problems it creates and all the so while I appreciate the politics and the warfare elements and just the pure magical elements, a lot of my fans apparently like the fact that I talk about the minutia of feudal society and the importance of that sort of thing moving forward. And I really do think it adds to world building in an important way, because everybody has had to deal with either a bureaucrat not doing what they want to or doing something to them that they didn't want to. So I bring that up. I had a trucker. I believe it or not, a large fan base of truckers. And hi guys, thank you so much for what you do. Really appreciate it. You kept us alive for the last 6 months, and that means more to me than you know. But truckers love my stuff because it's really long and it's really involved, and I really appreciate the fact that these guys who are doing a fairly monotonous job are enjoying this world that I built for the nitty-gritty parts and for the more intellectual parts. The fact that you can have crude humor and very sophisticated, even subtle humor at the same time in the same work, and they get both of it and they enjoy both of it. I've had truckers tell me, my God, I almost wiped out a minivan because of something that you said.
That's not
and
good.
John, it was just so that I could not control the vehicle for a couple seconds there, and it really scared me. And
listen responsibly.
Listen
right,
responsibly.
exactly. I love that.
Our next section is with Jonathan Thompson. I think he's still here, kind of eavesdropping the whole time. So hello again, Jonathan.
No, I'm gone. I left.
You are the CEO of Battlefield Press and the co-author of Spellmonger Tabletop RPG, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, to get into this, the fans have been excited to hear what where the project is and how it's been going. So we'll start with some simple questions to begin with. What attracted you to work with the Spellmonger series, or did you only hear about it through whomever asked you to do the work?
I was reading something or listening to something really on Audible, and it says suggestions, and this was at the top of the list. And so I said, "Huh, I've never heard of this guy before. Let me try this." And I started listening, and I fell in love with it. There was just so much in it.
Get captive.
Yeah, I mean, and I started seeing the action in stat blocks, and I knew then it would make a good game.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What boundaries in land and topics can we expect from this role-playing game?
The Five Duchies is generally where I'm sticking with for this, where we can make expansions later.
Well, we as laymen are and hopefully patient watchers also want to know how you'll get to an end product. So what are your biggest considerations when adapting a series to a tabletop RPG from a game designer's perspective?
The biggest challenge is to make sure that when you write it, it is reflected how the original property was. So, I mean, you want people to believe that they are in Terry's world when they're playing.
What has been the most fun or biggest challenge in your line of work?
That's a big question.
In regards to this or in general?
In regards to this or maybe other stories that you kind of brought in?
Yeah, well, you want everything to line up. You want it to go forward. You want, people to say, hey, I love this thing. And and that's the same challenges I receive whether I'm adapting somebody else's property or writing my own.
Mm-hmm.
It's they're all okay. There's so many ways I can mess this up. I hope I don't.
That's what playtesting is for, right?
That's right. And I love creating worlds anyway. I mean, that's kind of been my thing for most of my life. That's why I'm like a forever dungeon master, because I'd rather be there and I'd rather create the world for people to do it. Mm-hmm. And a game like this allows you to play a character that might have some impact in the world that's not Minalan.
As we know, we know that is the most important topic of questions for you to receive. What is the process for making the maps, and where do we stand as far as that goes?
I have hired a cartographer. He is about to. He's been doing a test. I sent him one PNG from the wiki so he could look at it, and he's going to see. I'm going to see what he does and see how it looks, and I'm going to show it to Terry and see what he thinks. And after that, I need to get high res files of the maps so he can make them pretty.
Okay.
Yeah, my maps suck.
So hopefully the fans will kind of
apologize
slow down about that.
But it's still there. There is some fans have taken some of the maps on the wiki, mushed them together, and you can see, there's that the road to Vanador. You can follow that journey. It is there. So yeah, it was really good.
We really enjoy the fan participation there, but they are most adamant they want those maps. How does hanging a spell work, at least in the context of a possible magic system?
Well, it took me a long time to figure that out. The standard spell casting, the Vanguard system doesn't work, not for this. So I went to a spell point system, which allows them to cast spells basically until they're out of power. And Erionite will, modify that. But they can actually cast a spell, let's say, 5 minutes before they need it, and those points are in reserve and used, so the spell is considered active, but it doesn't activate until they say, okay, I'm casting the spell, and it'll go off immediately.
Okay.
And if they don't ever cast it, then they can kill it, and those points return to their pool.
The debate on Erionite in a tabletop RPG setting has left many players and DMs on our Discord with thoughts on how it could work. Is there a design choice that you did make with this magic system that made this more solid and real to you, and how you're going to pursue this?
The shards of Erionite, as they get bigger, they will actually multiply the number of spell points the wizard that has it has, so they can cast bigger and spells. Because I've designed some things like some of the Alar's spell songs are at a higher level because they can't really be cast by humans except in special cases. But the Alan can cast them anytime they want to. So, and I don't have the exact numbers yet because I haven't started playing with it because I've rewritten the magic system like 4 times in the last 6 months. But we're gonna put from small to big, it'll have a multiplier for how many for the spell points. So like the Magosphere will have the biggest, and a shard that you get from Boval Vale will have probably the smallest.
Oh, the Magalith.
We'd like to establish a bit more of a baseline explanation of the fire that happened in your office and the delays from it. We hope that you'd care to share where this has left you and what we can do to help you in catching back up. Is there anything the fans listening can do to help you meet your December 2020 deadline that we've heard about?
Well, let me tell you about it first. I had gone to Gen Con in August last year, and somebody had broken into my house and stolen a bunch of stuff and then set fire because my office is at my house, and destroyed about, luckily we had a great team of firefighters, but I only lost about 25%, but some of that was, like computers and stuff. And so I actually had to start over from scratch on the whole build because all my files had all destroyed. And then my backups, a lot of it was corrupted because, they were backing up at the time of the fire. And so it was a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess.
So I ended up having to buy new equipment, which I didn't get to until right about March of this year. And I completely replaced everything. But then we had COVID hit, and I couldn't have a couple of people in my household that are susceptible, in the high risk category. So all of this has caused me to have a huge delay. And this wasn't the only thing that delayed. I had 2 other projects that were due out before this one. And I have finally caught up on those as well while I've been working on rewriting Spellmonger. But as far as helping, if you want to send me drawings, if you want to send me high-res images of maps, background or 2 on characters, that would be appreciated. And obviously, I'll give you credit.
Not to detract from that at all. I think that one of the magical things about the Spellmonger universe is, and my take on world building and something I really hope Jonathan and Jonathan does appreciate is the fact that everybody is their own main character.
Exactly.
And as when I'm writing a book in first person, it's really easy to get really narrowed in on, Dresden is an excellent example. You get narrowed in on the character and you're really involved in that character, but the world building kind of, I don't know, I enjoy the Dresden books, but my approach has always been that you can't just show the Civil War from Rhett Butler's perspective. A lot of other people had a lot of other stories going on at the same time. And while I want Minalan to be the heroic character, I also want to make sure that it's apparent to everyone that there are heroes all over the place on Callidore, and you may not recognize their heroic journey from the outside, but as I tried to show Dara and the Hawk Maiden trilogy, she's the hero. She's going through an entirely different journey than Minalan is, even though they're neighbors and are sharing a lot of the same things. She's going through an entirely different story, and that's really why I want the FRB adaptation to be able to reflect the idea that yes, you can be a hero in the story. I mean, I think it's the secret to good FRP.
For now, Jonathan, we want to thank you for coming and just sharing your answers to this. Is there anything you'd like to add? Advertisements, plugs?
No, not really. I mean, I just read book 11, so I'm a little behind some of you, and I'm going, ooh.
I caught your message earlier. Yeah.
Oh,
And
I'm
you know,
a bit through number 12, and I'm excited for the ending.
well, it's like
Last 5 chapters.
without spoiling, I thought I knew the origin of humanity until I read it. I'm going, well, I was close, but not that close.
I first of all thank you for coming out, Terry. As the author of Spellmonger, we're quite pleased to be able to give you this platform for the day. And I think we can begin this by stating we're excited to finish book 12.
At one end of my goals here is to kind of deconstruct the archetype of the wizard in all of its different manifestations. And as Aaron said, yeah, you do have the old Gandalf character, but I always wondered, okay, Gandalf is over 1,000 years old by the time we meet him in The Hobbit, and he's got a tremendous backstory that we know nothing about. Theoretically, at some point, Gandalf had to be less competent, less experienced, and a little more fresh.
I would say that's more true of Dumbledore than Gandalf, because Gandalf isn't actually a wizard, he's an angel. He got sent down to Earth with everything he needed already in his head.
He's one of the Ainur, if you're going to be, yeah.
Right. And I agree. I mean, Gandalf kind of cheats that way. Something, a character like Merlin, the traditional Arthurian Merlin.
Exactly.
Which Gandalf is essentially patterned after, is more self-made. And in the Arthurian mythos, we actually have kind of a prehistory of Merlin before he gets to Arthur, in which he has all these other adventures. I mean, great fiction has been written about that. The other end of my goals, though, in terms of creating Minalan as a character, I think I borrowed heavily from the old John W. Campbell stable of writers, Heinlein in particular, and his competent men. Minalan isn't good at everything, but he's good at enough things. And he knows people who are better at things than he is, and he's not afraid of going to them and invoking their aid. And I think it's also part of being a wizard. In the ancient times, a wizard is the man who knows. And I'll be discussing this probably a lot in Wizard coming 13. Again, deconstructing the man who knows. Minalan is often seen as the smartest guy in the room. And a lot of that is bluster and self-promotion or just happenstance. But we want to see by the end of the series how this man truly becomes wise and sees wisdom as a pursuit in its own right. And there's a lot of steps to get from where he is now to where that is. And enjoying that journey, I think, is in through a number of different genres and different, well, not genres, but a number of different fantasy tropes. By the time we're done, I plan on doing a beat down essentially every major fantasy trope out there. That's one reason why I went with 30 books. For Minalan, it's all one big thing, and how he deals with it, how he grows into his authority, his power, his potency, and case despite himself, he is in a position where he's forced to exercise authority. I think we can look forward to a much more sophisticated, especially in the last 10 books. We're going to see a transition from survival to inquiry to sophistication. And we're going to basically deconstruct the wizard trope in a lot of different ways, and at the same time as building wizard character based on those tropes to a more Gandalf-y sort of thing.
You're saying he hasn't gotten there already? I'd say book 13. I'd say book 12 is pretty Gandalf-y.
He's still adopting it, I think, at the time. And I think that's what Terry's saying, is at the last 10 books, he'll finally fully Oh yeah, I've done this before. Let me just.
Right. I'm the freaking spellmonger, man. The draw to Minalan as character is the fact that he is more complete than I think the traditional heroic fantasy trope makes him.
That's what I was trying to say earlier, essentially.
Yeah, I think it gives him more depth, and as we go through from the first couple of books, really at HedgeMage, where he's starting to get a feel for himself as it's basically it's where he becomes the imposter syndrome. Where before that, I think from a psychological perspective, man is feeling that he's doing that, but he's doing it until somebody better comes along. And I think at HedgeMage he realizes there's really no one better who's going to come along here. It's up to me to handle this. And that were the character growth over the course of 5 books. But it's just the beginning of his overall character growth, because the world that you see when you're 25 is very different than the world that you see at 35 or 45. And as we follow this character, we're going to get the benefit of his maturation.
As we progress through the series, what did you think of the foreshadowing and history arcs? I mean, Minalan Potato God is definitely foreshadowing. I'm putting that out there.
I mean, I already brought up Man of Forthin.
It's incredible, especially when you go back through and you realize this has already been brought up, and these seeds were planted 4 books ago, and suddenly
perfectly by Olmeg.
Yeah. and this story sprouts up.
Most authors shy away from the minutiae of daily life in fantasy, but your work seems to latch onto that and thrive. Do you find this easy to make entertaining, or do you spend hours in research to write this way?
Yes and yes. I do find it easy, and I do spend hours and hours in research. For Magelord alone, I went back and reviewed probably 150 to 200 medieval English court cases, manorial court cases. And through each one of them, because you only got specific information about the court case, but over the course of time and put in context of English manorial law and manorial life, builds a really detailed picture of these people's lives.
Yeah.
And it's only one slice where they interact with the legal authorities. But that said, it supposes a much richer life outside of that, and details of that often come through. At the same time, I would go back and read accounts of medieval monasteries and ecclesiastical courts and ecclesiastical reports. I'd even do research in things like how much chicken, eggs, and pork you would order for a particular feast, and who paid for that. There are a lot of really fascinating pieces of minutiae like that in the Middle Ages that I think can really flesh out the story and even become elements of the story themselves. For example, a joust that may or may not include a heavy financial reward, that may or may not include a marriage proposal. Those sorts of details I pulled from actual medieval history, and oftentimes and reincorporated them into my books because they're authentic, really are. Those things did happen. Therefore, if I give it a new coat of paint, file off the serial numbers, I can retell those great stories in my world in a way that makes my world seem authentic for the very best of reasons.
There are definite cultural differences in Spellmonger as it's set in a medieval society, mostly. What have been some of the exciting and/or challenging parts of exploring those differences in this series?
That's a very interesting question, and it goes to the amount of research that I do on our own Middle Ages, our own pre-industrial period, and how we got to an industrial period. And when you go back, you do some in-depth analysis of how people lived during the Middle Ages. First of all, it really sucked in terms of famine, disease, life expectancy, social issues. It was, life was nasty, brutal, and short. There's no argument there. But within that, you also get glimpses of some commonalities with our own lives and civilizations that I think really speak to people when you realize that, bringing home the bacon day and bringing home the bacon in 1400s, while they actually dragged home a pig and we bring home bacon, the impulse, the pure human impulse to strive for better than what you have, to improve your lot, to make life better for your children. Those things are all the same. It's just that the rules have changed between a pre-industrial and an industrial society. And that kind of goes to the point, is that we don't really have an appreciation of the scale of our lives the way that people pre-industrial society did. If you live in an agrarian life, then yes, the moment that you are sexually mature and able to plow a field, you get married off, because you're probably going to be dead by the time you're 40.
I think one of the things as well, because I work for an international NGO, is that stuff's still going on. So there are still people, 12, 13, and sometimes younger, getting married. So I think that's why I really appreciate being part of the story, because the story is set up and is completely realistic, like in how everything's described and told.
What would you answer to those focused on those cultural differences? So I think we're kind of already discussing that this is how it was.
And while Callidore is not, for word, how it was, it's not a historical fantasy. It is a high fantasy with a very specific world and a very specific history. You can look at virtually every agrarian society, the world, and a history, and identify certain common elements that are going to hold true regardless whether we're here on Earth or we're someplace else. It's more of a matter of human nature than it is a matter of culture. And while I appreciate the fact that, and I'll come right out and say it, people have suggested that there are no people of color on Callidore, which is incorrect. We just haven't met them yet. That there are no LGBT people on Callidore. And my answer to that
you did
is
mention
that,
a gay deity once.
I thought there was the Night Order of yes,
right.
Androcene.
And that's my point. I think that every human culture, especially pre-agrarian cultures, came up with ways to contend with these social issues, and they're not all going to be the same. The Narasi tend to be fairly tolerant of LGBT people if they stay within the bounds, the social bounds that they've been given. And with those bounds, they have a large degree of freedom, usually associated with a clerical order. My compromise, in order to keep it realistic and keep the world realistic, is that in the Society of Five Duchies, clerical orders, which include lay orders, have evolved to that encompass philosophies that embrace various aspects of the LGBT. And when I have had people ask me, why haven't we seen a gay character in Spellmonger, my reply has been, what makes you say that you haven't? Not every story is necessarily going to involve someone's sexuality. And at this point, I haven't had a story that's had an overtly gay character. arise. That said, there's certainly gay people on Callidore.
I do believe we also had there was one of the handmaidens of Mother who seemed to have a female partner, and I swear I remember this. I can't think of her name, though.
You're absolutely correct. Well, that's what it's going to take. I mean, here's the deal. I want to write the most authentic work that I can.
And it wasn't Cantandra, but...
Right.
Like,
okay.
I want to write something that people who are reading it get so enthralled in the story that they are there. And in order to do that and to do it convincingly, I have to take a lot of different perspectives and show a lot of different perspectives. Some of which are going to piss off my readership, and I get that. I'm hoping that the bulk of my work will be appealing enough to enough people to sustain it, which thus far it has. That said, I take a risk with every book of pissing someone off. And while I'm concerned about cancel culture and the possibility of alienating readers with every book I write, I'd like to think that if I stick to the ideal of crafting a story that's genuinely entertaining, informative, and engaging, that, yeah, as you come across parts that are I've written parts that are personally offensive to me, but I wrote because I felt that they were needed to drive the story forward, either at an emotional level or at a plot level. Eric's correct. Not everybody loves Kino. Most of my fans do, but not everybody does for exactly the reasons that you pointed out. That said, she's a
it has less to do with how she acted and more to do with the fact that her brother and her father didn't do more than they did to try to put the kibosh on it, since it was since when it first comes out, it sounds so stupid.
And when you read the trilogy about her backstory, all of that will fall into place.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I'm saying. I expect my readers to be challenged by my work, but I hope that they will be so challenged that they give up on it and don't see payoff in later stories and later books that puts it more in context and maybe brings it back to a place where they feel more comfortable.
So it's like you're saying you're asking your readers to give you a little bit more rope so that you could and possibly future hang yourself with here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Oh, I'm screwed up. I have no doubt. But it's the way that you screw it up that's important.
As characters are introduced in Spellmonger, some characters kind of lend themselves towards a stereotype. Does this continue, or is there a payoff? And for my answer, it's not a one-and-done book. A single book means that all character arcs should be covered within those pages. As a series develops, those character arcs kind of span multiple novels. And so I feel that's kind of to help answer how people look at these. Are like, why is Min like this? He's only one no, there's growth. So mine, I think I'll have an unpopular opinion here, but I liked Garkescu. I really enjoy a good villain or evil-leaning character. A general bastard of a character just really makes stories stand out. And it's clear the Undead God is going to affect the story as a whole more than Garkescu, but Garkescu as a character in that book, fantastic.
I think this is basically summed up by everything else I've said, but Minalan's growth as a man, as a wizard, and as a politician. And
I'll add
also husband, yes. And also, as his growth continues, the world around him changes in scope and in scale to match the threats, to just provide threats that are even a challenge for a person with the level of capability that he's become. As you go on, you see more and more, this isn't some plucky hero with a secret reservoir of power that he can't tap yet that mysteriously makes him the chosen one, that he has to learn how to control. He is legitimately he is legitimately a great man, and he's showing you the ways that any normal person could do if they theoretically had balls the size of his.
Spellmonger focuses on Minalan, a young wizard freshly freed from his drafted service in a war. So, in thinking about his character in the first book, what kind of things do people, the new readers, have to look forward to?
Well, that's actually pretty easy. Minalan, as you mentioned, is a fairly young wizard in the first book. He is not a novice. He has had some experience, limited experience, in some very specific fields. He feels competent enough to wing it. I think that over the course of the growth of his character, as he meets, most importantly, as he meets his wife, his future wife, and grows in that dimension as a husband and a family man, as well as a political figure and a wizard of great power.
In addition to just the realness of him as a character, I will say that one thing that I enjoy a great deal is the fact that he shacks up with the girl of his dreams in the first book without any unresolved sexual tension, gets married and has a kid, and that's book 1. And like, so the rest, there are so few stories out there about marital relationships instead of, oh my God, I think she's so hot, but we can't be together.
My favorite character is definitely Penny. Partly because nobody in the first book would have survived without Penny showing up.
Yeah.
But her entrance in the first book was, when she actually joins in person, is phenomenal. Like, Min's life's on the line. Like, the dead god is there, incarnate through this, through shaman, and unless Penny had just arrived at that time, we'd have no more series. So, that was
well, and then he picks a fight with his girlfriend too. So
oh yeah,
she
goes.
Oh, that was.
Oh, I
Treats
get
the
that
girlfriend
serving
like a
girl out of your
servant.
room.
No. As fans, we see Pentandra save Minalan's life in Spellmonger, and we've concluded that your female characters hold the credit for pivotal changes to society. Have you achieved what you set out to do in creating her character, and what do fans have to look forward to in those character arcs throughout the series?
I'm so glad you asked that question. Honestly, we're only about halfway done with Pentandra as a character, as her development and growth. I think, and this will be brought to the fore in HedgeMage, book 14, when we come back and revisit Pentandra, still in her person voice, but certainly from her perspective. And we see her not, as a young woman struggling with her first really serious permanent relationship, but we see her as a wife and a mother and an extremely politically powerful person within the Alshar court. While we've been following men for the last couple of books, Pentandra has been very quietly but very steadily improving her position of power in the Alshar court, and has been preparing to bring Minalan and the other wizards up to the next level, so to speak. She has some foreknowledge, which she is very careful about how she uses.
I am very. You made me really nervous when you that.
You think you're nervous, dude? From a writer's perspective, oh my God, prophecy sucks. If you do it wrong, it's you get jaded about it. You got to handle certain topics very carefully, and prophecy is one of them. And I've only hit upon it a couple of times, as in, yes, this is a prophecy that will come true. And I'll follow through with that. But one thing that my studies of the ancient and classical worlds have revealed is that prophecy almost never turns out the way you think it's going to. And so I have to be very careful about that. There's a reason that the censor banned it. And I'm not sure I'm not in favor of that ban. That's one of my favorite things about the series, I'll be honest. Writing many men and write their relationship together, because neither one of them has the answer. Neither one of them is the leader. He is more than happy to let men go out there and stick his chin out and take the punches so that she can fix it later. And Min is more than happy to do that so that Penny will fix it later.
Paperwork.
But neither one of
So
them.
that he doesn't have to do paperwork.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I get to
But
wear the
neither
funny
one
hat
of
and I look
them-
nice, but
Right. The friendship and the relationship between Penny and Men is one of the more popular things about the series. I think it's partially because neither one of them really feel that they know what they're doing and rely on each other to fill in the gaps. And that works 90% of the time. The 10% of the time that it doesn't, that's where adventure comes in.
I follow 2 War Magi and one of the thieves that's in the series almost exclusively. Whenever I see them, I just sit down like, oh, this is gonna be good. Like pull out the popcorn.
Lorcas
so, like,
and the
Azar, Caswallen, and Katina. Whenever they come onto the screen, it's like, oh, something's weird's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good.
I get it with Azar.
and Caswallen, they follow this stereotypical idea of here's what a War Magi should be, what they should act like, and they put it on like a suit when they're applying for work or when they're just, hello, I'm representing my people. Oh, they really do though.
No,
Azar has this situation.
I do not believe that Azar can turn it off.
Your point is well taken. He does kind of put it on his suit, but it's a suit he's really comfortable in. Okay.
Yes.
He's worn for so long that he doesn't ever want to take off, and that's kind of and Winnick is just slightly sociopathic and a little bit of a sadist.
Yeah.
But,
So I
I
really
think-
like how blatant in your face Caswallen is, and Katina, who you'll see in book 9, really is a unique person. Let's just establish that, and I won't go any farther.
I welcome all to the Ghost Rock and its hallowed halls, where you are subject to my. Someone post the GIF in the chat when I say this. Unlimited power.
And
Right.
of course, you can find the link to the Discord on the wiki.
Ah, yes,
Excellent,
that's my
excellent.
next point.
And
Dave,
thank you both thank
you
all
have the
3 of
wiki.
you for all the hard work that you've done. To be honest, I'm often credited with being wildly successful indie creator, but the fact of the matter is that folks like you are also indie creators just by latching on this and doing what you've done with it. The wiki is amazing. Discord is amazing.
The big idea is that as we all keep reading the series, we can consult the wiki as a bit of a reference. There's actually, like, Terry's got out 19 books to do with when you include cadet series and anthologies and novellas. And so there's a huge cast of characters. So keeping track of everything can be a trick. So that's what the
Tell
wiki's
me
there for.
about it.
Where did you
So
come up
mean,
with
I
the
love
idea for having people swear by God's penises and boobs and
It's
things?
just-
That has historical precedence. As a matter of fact, in the ancient world, classical world, medieval world, swearing by body parts of various divinities was pretty common. And of course, it fell out of favor as the divinities fell out of favor. But as long as the Middle Ages, people swear by Christ's wounds. That's where Zounds in Shakespeare comes from. Is it's a contraction of God's wounds. In ancient Egypt, they swore by the emperor's big toe. And yes, they did swear by various goddesses.
Interesting.
Prominent
they do the pilgrimages to saints, and there's the body parts of the different saints are
right,
different
exactly.
cathedrals,
Exactly.
and yeah.
I am so happy to be perceived as a carrier.
We're gonna share a quick comment from Twitch.
ahead.
They ask that "Listen Responsibly" be a Mongerverse T-shirt right now.
Listen responsibly.
Listen responsibly.
Yeah,